welcome to One Love, One Connection, One Us. And tonight we are going to talk about when it's time to get naked. And I'm not talking about, stripping off your clothes. This is a much deeper intimacy, which is actually going ahead and being transparent about being vulnerable and transparent with your beloved and actually in life. But before we get started on that particular topic, we are going to go ahead and get ourselves sprayed in. So hold on, folks. We'll be right back.
To me, God, I'm just seeing God.
And we're back. And so, beloved, are you here? Okay, so today or tonight we are going to be talking about vulnerability. Now, and one of the, I will talk about the reason why I decided on, touching on this particular subject. One of the things I had run across Brene Brown's TED Talk about vulnerability. And one of the things that really struck me about her talk was that for her, when she did her, I guess you could say, her interviews and her study into vulnerability, that it was a total shift in paradigm for her, that it took her out of her comfort zone, out of a place of comfort for her. And so one of the things that, she had more of an analytical mind, more scientific in terms of what it was that she wanted to, what it was that she wanted to talk about in terms of people being able to recover from, I guess you could say, experiences that were, I guess you could say, I won't say tragic. It just that what many people would be more guarded about. And so, she was one of these individuals who had been very guarded about her experience. So when she started doing this study and she began to talk to people and find out what their story was, and found out how vulnerable and transparent that they were, and that what she found in her study was that the people who live this type of life of transparency, of honesty, and being integrity with themselves and with others, that they seem to live more fulfilling lives. One of the things, one of the three things that she talks about is that her study into vulnerability progressed on three levels. The first one was, based on the book from The Gifts of Imperfection and that particular book was mainly focusing on being who you are, being who it is that the Creator would have you be. The second book that she wrote, it was Be All In, that if you're going to be transparent, be all in with your transparency, be all in with your authenticity, be all in with in all areas of your life so that you could have a more fulfilling life. And then the third book that she wrote is called Rise Strong. And that one is, if you fall, you get up and you try again. One of the things that she admitted that she had done an interview sometime before, after she had written the book. There was the interviewer said to her, asked her the question, I'm planning on living an authentic life. Would you, recommend that for me? And she said yes. And he says, well, what's the upside of, he asked the question, well, what's the upside of living a more vulnerable and transparent life? And she says that your, relationships, your life will become more fulfilling. And then he asked her, well, what are the downsides of being vulnerable? And her answer was, you're going to stumble, you may fall, but the main focus is about getting back up. And that you find that with your vulnerability and transparency, that you in fact become stronger because you become more assured of who you are. Now, I will say that for myself, I started doing that long before I even became aware of her books. And I would say that one of the first steps that an individual should take is really being honest and transparent with themselves. And that means being able to look at your flaws as well as your strengths and being able to love yourself from that particular place. Do you have anything that you want to add? Because I know that I've been talking for a minute, and I know that I can be kind of long-winded there. Oh, my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. My husband's been talking, and he hasn't. You all haven't really been able to hear him, so I do apologize for that. I had him on mute.
It's not every wife that can do that. So, I love her a lot. No harm, no foul, no doubt. I love the information you're bringing to us. And it's interesting how you start with the topic, when it's time to get naked. And when I see that from the space of the positive direction you're taking the conversation, it feels good living an authentic life, being able to understand that living an authentic life makes life more fulfilling. And being all in and being transparent to who you are. But what I come to observe is people have different concepts of what vulnerability is. Because the male energy and the female energy, which sees things from different perspectives, and with us being a combination of male and female, where generally the dominance of the male energy is with the male species, but not always, because we know how there are some women out there that can have that alpha male attribute. So I say that because I'm understanding that vulnerability oftentimes means something different to men. And to men, vulnerability actually means being susceptible to physical, mental, emotional attack, okay? And in the consciousness of a man, you do not want to be vulnerable. Now, when you transmute that to better understanding that vulnerability means transparency to others, then you can have a different look at what that's about. But then we're kind of bringing all this to a space of, emotional intimacy. So we have to be kind of clear as to where the other person is regarding what they feel when we use these terms. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. So, again, this was, again, this subject really came up after I came across a video with Brene Brown. And I will say that I would say that living a vulnerable life, living a life of transparency does have its challenges. Main reason being is because, one of the things that you're concerned about is judgment. However, what I've come to understand over the years is, and I'm still, this is something that I'm working on myself on a daily basis, is that love and self-acceptance that for myself, and also being in that place of, I guess you could say, honesty, transparency, and loving myself as God would love me. Because ultimately, when you think about vulnerability, you're looking at all of your frailties and flaws, and I know that people have this tendency to go ahead and put up their representative to the world, because that is what we're taught to do. Taught to do. Many people are walking around living inauthentic lives and not really relating with one another in an honest manner. However, what I have found is that when I started my journey of being authentic with myself and looking at all of the things that that I would not have, I did not care to share with other people, especially after I got divorced and coming up against, I guess you could say, the ego, where I was judging myself for decisions that I had made in that state, and however it came to, I guess most of it really came to a head about 3 years ago, when I realized that much of that was buried in my guilt regarding my mother's death. She had transitioned with end-stage renal disease because she did not live, she did not work on her health, so it manifested into being what I would have considered like what her worst nightmare was. And I had actually blamed myself for her death, because there was a drink that I had given her that was that had some type of it was like a protein powder combination, but from my reading up of what I had heard about end-stage renal disease, one of the things that the person who has that needs is protein. But there were some other agents within the powder that could have exacerbated all of the, I guess you could say, all of the other things that she had going on with her. And so I had sort of spiraled into a depression after her transitioning, because I could almost tell that mine had taken place around that time. So when I had to get to a place of, I think, when I was working with Reverend Harvey and doing the relationship coaching, being honest about that, because it really wasn't until I had actually admitted it to him that was where my mind was with her transitioning, and my guilt and depression over her transitioning, and blaming myself for that. when I started digging in and being honest and transparent with myself and being more vulnerable with myself and allowing myself to another person who wasn't in a place of judging me for what I would have considered like all of the various mistakes that I had made in the mindset that I was in during the time that I had gotten a divorce from my ex-husband. But let's just put it this way. After opening up about that, after being able to, I guess you could say, open up the closets and let those skeletons, fall where they may and let them walk. Oh, and what they did was after they walked out of the closet, and much of the guilt that I had been feeling had fallen away. So, of course, there's that first relationship that we all have is with ourselves, and not being in that place of accusing ourselves for the frailties and flaws that we may have, because I will say that I will have to say that I think that it's really interesting that the Creator has created us in such a manner where we are perfectly imperfect, and with us being honest about where we are and being vulnerable and letting people see, we give them the freedom to be in that space of being vulnerable as well. But you were saying that for men, how would you say that this actually relates for a man in terms of being vulnerable? Because you said earlier that men, for the most part, would view this as being exposed to some type of pain. But would you like to go into a little bit more detail?
Yeah. The term vulnerable kind of means being susceptible to attack or harm. And that's men don't want to be in. But when we incorporate that terminology into being transparent, it brings a new meaning to it, because you're in relationship with whomever you have interaction with, and those levels vary from a simple connect to something that is emotionally deep. As far as men, from my perspective, can see that. And just as a sidebar, and note to giving praise and honor to the love and the memories of your mother. I know that this is around the time in which she had transitioned a few years ago, 2011 or 2010. And so we want to pay homage and honor to her and the gift of who you are in the world to us. So much love to you, and namaste. And I would say ashe to your beloved mother, spirit, that all is well in the spirit realm as she is our ancestor.
Thank you, sweetie. Yeah. So one of the things that, so after you get to that place of allowing yourself to open up, I would say that it's sort of for me, it was sort of a slow process in being vulnerable with other people. And I found that, especially especially with times when I was focusing in more on being a spiritual teacher and letting people know, I would be giving them ideas about how it is that they would develop their relationship with the Creator and develop their relationship with themselves. And oftentimes, one of the problems that I find, or it's not so much of a problem, but it's just sort of par for the course, is that many people look at people who have who they kind of, I guess you could say, put up on a pedestal, and they were like, I want to come back and be like you, and oftentimes I have to tell them, no, it's really about you. It's about you. It is about your journey. That my journey is my journey, but that doesn't invalidate the experience that you're having. And then let's just put it this way: me sharing my story, with whatever area that it may be in, whether or not it's with spirituality, whether or not it's with relationships, it doesn't regard. It didn't matter what area. What I would do is I would share myself and share my experience to let them know that the person that they saw before them that particular day did not happen overnight. It took time. It took loving myself. It took it's sort of taking baby steps towards being more honest, being more transparent. And let's just put it this way, ladies and gentlemen, it's much easier to be more honest and transparent. You don't have to remember anything because you are being who you are. And I think that one of the concerns that many people have is that they have that fear of being judged, of not being accepted. But here's something to think about. There's going to be some of that. There is going to be some judgment. There's going to be some, there are people who are not going to want to be around you. But there is so much strength in being transparent, and being honest about who you are, and walking in your truth, walking in your purpose, that what will happen is that your paradigm goes through a shift, and you begin to draw to you those people who are attracted to that authenticity, who are attracted to that, vulnerability, who are attracted to that transparency. The universe doesn't leave you out just to hang all by yourself. And as a result of you operating in that space, you get to be more fully you than you can imagine. Where you walk walk in the expression of being the person that God created you to be. And even I will say that even for myself, that is still an ever evolving process in and of itself. Because in addition to growing up in a Christian background, I cannot deny the part of myself that is magical, that came out of that time during that time during and after the divorce. Because that was the thing that eventually helped me climb out of that experience, where I was having experiences that cannot easily be explained. I got visited by what you would consider like some gods and goddesses that had never been a part of that paradigm that I had grown up in. And so I found myself leaning more heavily into my spiritual side, into my magical side, in order to transition, because one of the things that had happened, and I have to feel that the Creator set it up this way, but the things that I was used to doing in order to get myself to move further on into my experience, or through my life, they were not working. Everything that was tried and true and that I had grown up with did not work. And as a result of it, it was like everything had to fall apart in order to be built back up. And so when and that included, giving custodial custody of my children over to my ex-husband, because I was not, able to financially support them, and then actually moving out of state so that I could go through that process of healing, which I will admit that took a number of years. I don't think that I had any type of relief until the year we got married last year. So it was 2015, and my mother had transitioned in 2010, and it's a real strange place to be in, where you are experiencing that type of depression. I didn't even recognize it. I didn't recognize it until 2015. And there were a number of things that helped me to accelerate the process of getting back to a place where I could, be healed, be whole. And because I was honest about where I was, oftentimes there were people who were around me that were able to assist me so that I could move forward and be much stronger. And what was really interesting is that even through that process, many of the people had to tell me what it was that they saw, even though I did not recognize it in myself right away. And it allowed for me to recognize it later on as I look back. So do you have anything that you want to share in terms of your experience of leading a more authentic experience?
I like what you were saying there, because what I'm picking up is the part when you talked about, falling apart in order to build back up. What comes to my consciousness is that we are complete beings that oftentimes shut out our authenticity because of what we have been exposed to in our youth. As you described, we will grow up in certain religious backgrounds that will kind of form what we become when we become adults. And in our growth process, we come to a place of developing and feeling a sense of whether we are comfortable or uncomfortable with what we have become. So when I look at the topic that we're dealing with, I see that vulnerability interesting, because when we observe vulnerability, as intentionally bearing our soul to the world by showing our true self to others. We are in a space of allowing the transformation because as we grow from our youth into our adulthood, it's almost like butterfly, if you will, the caterpillar going into the chrysalis, becoming a butterfly to spread its wings and soar. Because most people, as they grow, they hide their true essence in the fear of rejection, the lack of self-confidence, heartbrokenness, and the lack of fulfillment in life, and sometimes in the sense of neglecting our emotional responsibilities to ourselves. So when we develop a better clarity, sometimes we need to break away from the things that has been holding us back from being authentic so that we can become more of who we truly are, who God has intended us to be, and not what people who have lived around us want to form us, develop a sense of being capable or admitting of some specific treatment, if you will, that is necessary for us to blossom and grow to the next level of our existence. But it's all about being connected to a spiritual energy of love and loving ourselves and recognizing that and not being judgmental to our experience, but learning from our experience so that we can continue to grow and evolve into being what we're supposed to become.
All righty, and on that note, we're going to take a quick music break. Okay, and we are going to be playing what Jesus Children? Jesus Children of America?
That sounds like a Stevie Wonder hit.
We'll be right back. And we're back. And so, okay, so I guess my question to you, okay, so here I'm going to, for a moment, and here's what I have found when you are not living what you would call a transparent life. Because of it, I find that, let's just say my experience has been that you're not able to be at ease in the relationship. You have a preoccupation about being judged accordingly. And then what I have found also is that when you start getting on that path of being more authentic, what will happen, or what happened to me, I can only speak from my experience, is when you have relationships with people, and when I got to that point of especially when it came to intimate relationships, there would be some people that I would have an exchange with, and it wasn't really that I did not that the person said anything or did anything where I wasn't able to share with them what I was thinking and feeling, but I had ran into that experience of running into a wall with whether or not I wanted to share as much of myself with a person who had a romantic interest in me or not. There were times, I think that after a while, when you begin living this experience, especially when you are open to the possibility of having a romantic involvement, you begin to operate sort of intuitively on whether or not that person is the right person for you. After a while, what had happened was, after I would have a conversation with the person, if I was not necessarily gelling with them on that particular level, I could tell them right away, well, I just don't think that we're a match. I'm not thinking that this is going to work. And I think that there was one other time that the person that I was talking to, I could not exactly figure out exactly what the issue was. I had noticed that one of the things that I had observed in their behavior was that I could not bring myself to tell them about the worst part of my experience. And I find that when you begin walking this path and you will walk into authenticity and vulnerability, there's a part of you that just has this intuitive yay or nay as to whether or not to share an individual. In fact, Brene Brown suggests that you should not share you shouldn't share everything with everybody, that there are certain people who are not, may not be worthy of what she calls your shame story, the part of yourself that you are really, that you really don't want, that would leave you exposed to a great deal of ridicule. So when I finally got to a point in that particular exchange with this person, I just, I finally got to that place where I actually went ahead and said, we should part ways. I don't think that this is going to work. And for the life of me, could not figure out the exact reason as to why. All I knew was that I did not feel that I was in that space where I could be transparent and honest with them and share that part of myself. I did not find myself feeling comfortable with that. And it's not because of anything he said. It's not because of anything that he did. It was just that, he did not feel like my soft place land is ultimately what it came down to. And the impression that he was left with was that he thought that I was broken. And it wasn't so much that I was broken, it was just that there was a part of me that just could not bring myself to trust him with those intimate aspects of myself. And I had really gotten to that place where it was either all or nothing. Either I could be all of myself and be completely present in a relationship, or I could not. And if I could not, then I needed to move on from that particular experience, because one of the things that when I started walking that path of vulnerability and transparency and authenticity is that I could not live a place in a space contrary to that. A lot of times, people sign up for experiences that from the very get-go they know is not going to work. And when you're in a place of being honest with yourself, you're not even going to bother signing up for the experience because you already know that it's going to end before it even begins. But a lot of times people, for whatever reason, whether or not they don't want to be alone, whether or not they want to fulfill a sexual need, it could be anything. Because the reason why people do the things they do, the reasons run the gamut. However, when you get into that place of operating in vulnerability and transparency, there's a part of you that's not going to even want to entertain it because they already know what that story is. Anything you want to share, David?
Good. It's good. I like it. It's interesting because I like the way in which you're sharing your story. And people are not willing to share their story, and they sometimes want to hear what they want to hear. And so as you was describing that relationship that you was talking about, I found it interesting that there was almost a sense of judgment when it wasn't necessary for it to come from that other person. It's weird because when I look at this, I'm seeing that transparency kind of implies an openness, a communication, and accountability, um, in operating in such a way that it's easy for others to see who we really are. You know, yet when I think of vulnerability, there's that the synonyms are kind of like defenseless, helpless, powerless, impotent, weak. And a person oftentimes doesn't want to feel those things. But when you are transparent, I think the person who you're with respects your openness, and they are your covering. You see what I'm saying? So you can be vulnerable to a person who can be your covering to your weaknesses, to what one may say your frailties. But you can't do that with everybody.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, you can't do that with everyone. And I suppose that what ends up happening when you begin to walk that path of being transparent, getting vulnerable, is that you develop a sort of a sixth sense as to whether or not you can share that with that person. And I know that that Pastor Sherry talks about that a great deal, about being vulnerable and transparent with people's stories. And though I think for those who don't really operate in that space of being intuitive, what she actually recommends, or what she has done, is that she will share one thing about herself that is totally off the wall, but that she's not all that concerned about it being out there and causing her any type of damage, and see what that person does with that information. If she doesn't hear anything, well, she begins that process of, I guess you could say, vetting the people who are around her. Okay, so and this is how she put it. This is how she put it in. Excuse me for taking people to church, but
Praise is praise.
But she talked to when she was relating this about how much of yourself, how to be authentic. What she related it to was Christ and those that he had surrounding him. So he had the multitudes, which is all of the people. Then he had the 12, which were his 12 disciples, and then he had the 3 that were the closest confidants, and even confidants, and even they had their they had their challenges with understanding what it was that he was trying to relay to them. So I guess you can say you could take the Pastor Sherry approach, especially if you're not operating in that space of intuitiveness where you can kind of pick up on whether or not you give them just enough information about yourself that you're not all that concerned with whether or not it goes out into the community, and they happen to call and say, oh, she's crazy, whatever. If she if that judgment comes back, then so be it. But I will say that I would recommend that you operate in that space of knowing, of sort of knowing. And here's what I found that happened to me when I was using my intuitiveness as to whether or not I could share information with a person or not. If I was able to talk about it, then I talked about it. If I wasn't, if it felt like, if I felt any type of resistance within my spirit about whether or not the information is it was too much, then I didn't share it. I did not go ahead and talk myself or logic myself into sharing any type of information with them. Yeah, anything that you want to add to that?
It's interesting. I look at the intuitive aspect of us as being a spirit being, but allow your spirit being to be clear of who you are. You know, the story that you brought up about of Pastor Sherry, a Baltimore pastor here, who said the other day, she said, I like being open and real with people, and I'll tell my story first before somebody else does, because I'm not going to let you have one up on me, you know. And we all have our experiences of living this life, and what's happened brings us to our present day of now. And so, yeah, you got to be real with yourself. You know, you can't joke with this life of living if you want the best out of it. And when you're not lying and you're being transparent, when you are connected to your spirit self and knowing that once connected appropriately, you're good to go. You don't have nothing to worry about. Like Stevie Wonder's song said, you know, meditation. There's some things that we can do, the work, that makes it feel so much better. But when you're not doing the work, you get out there with some people if you want to, and if you have a mindset of the desire to be naked, there's no telling what you may expose yourself to. There's some people who allow themselves to be naked, and next thing you know, they get bit up on by some kind of bug or something, right? Or, you know, and you know, even though we're talking the spiritual realm or we're talking a different type of being naked, they still apply to one another in the sense that you can be a person who you decide to be naked with somebody, you open doors, okay? And you have to decide whether these are the doors you really want open with this person. Because what if this person is a person who may see you naked but then don't want to respect you, your wishes? Because they're like, okay, she's naked now, I can do some things. It ain't that type of party. But what is the person's interpretation of what you're presenting? So that vulnerability, we have to be mindful of how vulnerable we choose to be amongst the people that we are around, and allow ourselves to be authentic about that reality. Because some people will face it, and some people will go give it a shot and say, let's see what happens. Oh, I'm always worried about that type of mentality, because there's no telling what the consequences could become, you know?
Okay. This is just a thought. But I'm thinking that, well, when you begin to walk the path, those type of people tend to fall away. The ones who want to let's see if it'll work. Because let's okay. So I'm going to give a for instance, because back when I was living in Arizona, there was this guy that I had been talking to for a year, and I knew from the very start that it wasn't going to work. I could tell, there's sometimes you could just tell that it's not going to work, and I told him as much, that it's not going to work. Well, this guy, his thinking was, she turning me down, Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can get her. So what began happening, this was again during the time when I was having all of my experiences, and what began happening was I was that part of myself, that side, was beginning to express itself, work myself out of the place that I had been. And so I shared with him. I heard my I am say, look, if this is to work with this guy, you need to tell him everything. You need to go ahead and lay it out there on the line, because the only reason, a larger part of his motivation is because you told him no. That was where he was. You told him no, and he, how could you not want him? I went ahead and I shared with him like I was going through, some things with the ex-husband, and in that button that the ex-husband had that ability to push, and there were some people who helped me to overcome that, but he was one of the first people that I had reached out to, and the person took me through a process where he actually was able to help me to remove the button that the ex-husband pushed. So I had, I had been talking to him, and I shared with him what had happened, and then pretty much I told him, much of the stuff that I'm doing, in some instances, people would, he had been avoiding some, there was a spiritual teacher I was following, Dr. Gibson, and there were some things that Dr. Gibson had shared about the spiritual world that, that nobody else has been talking about. And these were the things that I was getting involved with. These were the things that were helping me to overcome what I was experiencing. And so I made a playlist for him. Every time I would talk to this guy, he would not listen to the playlist. He would not listen to the playlist. So, for close to 4 weeks, he had not listened to the playlist. And I got really kind of sarcastic with him and said, "Oh, well, are you going to listen to the playlist?" Or are you just going to? I forgot exactly how I put it, but I was really kind of snippy about it. And he listened to the playlist, and I guess he came back to me and asked me a few questions. And what I found was, I had told him exactly where I was and who I was being. I never, ever once, deviated from, if you have an issue with anything that I say or that I do, if you want to walk away from this experience, all you have to do is let me know, and you can go. I'm not going to try to chase you down. I'm not going to do anything. Anyway, after listening to the playlist and after having my experience where somebody helped me through a shamanic journey to remove the button that the ex-husband was pushing, he just stopped. He just decided to stop talking and only communicated with me through text messaging. And so I was a little annoyed because, I would have preferred that he just simply say, I don't think I can continue this, and we should go our separate ways. So I ended up sending him a text message saying to the, in effect, look, it's clear to me through your actions, you're no longer going to, you no longer want to do this. You no longer want to do this. I wish you well. And he sent me a response back. I'm sorry that I made you feel that way. I wish you well too. I think I said something about being friends. But anyway, it ended. And so let's just say that being authentic kind of weeds out that I guess you could say, that experience of that person saying, well, let's see if we can walk this path. We can, walk this experience and see how it'll fit, see how it'll work.
Now, this is the same person that you told it wasn't going to work?
Yeah, I had told them that it wasn't going to work, and a larger part of it was because I could tell with the way things were coming up organically for me, for in terms of my spirituality. I knew that it was going to be in conflict with anybody who was really like a fundamentalist, a fundamentalist Christian, and he that was the type of background that he was coming from. So I kind of like, I'm like, I don't know, this isn't going to work. And I much as told him so. But I guess in a sense he had kind of worn me down.
Now, this is the same person that you had said what was it? You said it wasn't going to work, and dang, I almost had it. There was something else that, you said that he said that the reason why he pursued you was because you had told him no. Is this the same person?
Yeah, because his mentality was that, how can you turn me down? And this must be a really good thing if you turn me down, so let me see if I can come and get you. That was his thinking.
Okay. Yeah, so what I'm saying here is that motives had a strong play in the way in which his response was to you, but when you opened up so that he could clearly see it, then he became afraid and wanted to get away.
Exactly.
Scared cat.
But I guess that's what I'm really getting to, is that when you operate in that space of vulnerability and authenticity and transparency, that you run, if you run into that, those people who would do that type of thing to see how, let's see if it'll fit, because that's where that guy's mindset was at. And let's see if I can make this fit. She don't think that it'll work. Who's she to tell me that it ain't going to work? That was his mentality.
Yeah, I feel you. There are some people out there that's like that. It's funny, relationships are an amazing thing, and they really work when transparency, emotional intimacy, and that ability to see that a person will be a covering for those places of you that are vulnerable, okay? Now, I know the experiences that I have had. I am an open person. I just love being open. It's just, that's natural for me. I'm not trying to hide anything because I don't think there's anything to hide. But you have to be mindful that you have to stay connected to the spirit to be intuitively wise enough to know exactly how to handle the relationship that you are approaching. And as you was talking about it, it reminded me of that relationship I had shared with you where this woman became a stalker in my life. And it was so crazy because it was kind of like an approach that she made, and honestly, I grabbed a card from off of a gas station phone number on it, and it said something about, you want to make some extra money, I'll make this phone call, and it was about some body wrap stuff. So I was like, cool, and there were some other multi-marketing aspects that this person was into. And so they called me over to, have the little sit down where you look to see what they have and all of that. So that was cool. But she had other intentions, which I didn't initially see, because she wanted me to come back for another visit for whatever reason it was. Next thing I know, she wants to hang out a little more. And so I was like, okay, she ain't bad. I can think I can, go ahead and go back and see what things look like. And so she actually invited me to a church service. And I was like, okay, I guess that ain't a bad idea. I mean, we have this as a common interest. And I was familiar with the church that she was talking about. So, okay, fine. But I think this is the strange part about that. Particular night after we came back from that church service, she wanted me to go home with her. Now you talk about the nightclub. So I don't know. This is weird, but if I'm not mistaken, it was that night she invited me to come back home with her. And I think there was an intimacy going on that, we was close. And I was saying to myself, I was praying, I was like, Lord, what is this here? Is this here situation of which I should get myself involved in a little more? Because there's a sense that you can pick up, when you know that somebody's kind of got something for you. So I was like, well, I got something for you. But I talked to the Lord about it, and this is so weird. When I talked to the Lord about it, it was so weird. It was like this. Well, you have free will, but there will be consequences. And the man side of me was like, oh, we can handle consequences, no doubt about that. Let's go ahead and jump into this, right? Wow, no consequences last for about 3 years. In the process of that relationship, what's so funny is that I discovered that there was more of a lying tendency that this person had. There was an aspect of her that appeared that she wanted to be vulnerable and transparent, but then at the same time, she had a mindset that was believing something totally contrary about me, because she felt as if because she wanted me, everybody else that knew me wanted me, who was female as well. So she wanted to travel wherever I went, to go wherever I was going, and I didn't pay no attention to this. I'm figuring, okay, she just wants to be with me. This is super cool. But then she started asking people if I was involved with them. And so those females would come back to me and say, that girl that you with, she's asking if we were in a relationship. And I was like, what? And she had an insecurity about herself that was really bizarre, because the way in which the relationship twisted, it was becoming extremely uncomfortable, because her motives were different than I anticipated them to be. And when she started dragging my name in the mud, because she actually, her head was in a place to where she was saying that, I think you're cheating. And she literally went around asking people, was I with other people, where this wasn't happening. And so they was like, they come to me and they say, yo, King, man, you cheating on that old lady? And I was like, what are you talking about, right? They say she came up to me and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, whoa. So I bring this up because the transparency that I have with my associates is real. They knew that they could come to me and share something with me. But she was being on the DL about her going around spying on me, what have you, driving down the alley, peeping to see if by chance she could peep inside the house, going to old girlfriend houses, knocking on their door, finding phone numbers on my phone, calling people to find out who they were. That's not the type of relationship you want. And so I became aware of that, and I was blessed because it was getting real scary. I was trying to figure, she was going to invite me over the house one day and put something in the food. But I had to trust in the Lord. I'm telling you the truth. That's why it's very important to stay connected to your intuitiveness and your spiritual energy, your spiritual being, because it's going to guide you through these things. But it's about your meditation. It's about not telling lies, being truthful, okay, and telling your story. It's okay, as long as you don't mess yourself up. So you like the topic of the story is, when it's time to get naked, be sure it's cool. But when it's time to put your clothes on, you better go ahead and do it to get on up out of there.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick music break.
I hope I'm still on the same page. I don't know.
Actually, you are. Actually, you are. But we're going to take a quick break. And if anybody, after this music break, if anybody has any questions, if they have a story that they want to share, please interject it, and we will be right back. But I will say that was a life learning lesson, and so we are going to listen to Marvin Gaye's Life is for Learning.
I know that's right.
And we're back.
Hey. How are you?
Yeah, I'm excellent. How are you?
With you, baby, I'm fine.
So if anybody has any questions, comments, or they have a story to tell, just the number 1, and we will bring you on. But to just recap for all of you, when it's time to get naked, we've been talking about that, and when we use the term naked, we are talking about vulnerability and being honest and being transparent and being in that place. And one of the things that we had observed in our experiences was that when you start operating in that space, that it seems as if the universe has this sort of support system for you, that you begin that, even though you may have those moments where you stumble and fall, through being courageous, through being transparent and honest and vulnerable about who you are, where you are, that the universe has this way of supporting you and helping you through those moments and those challenges. We have talked about our various experiences
okay.
In terms of our relationship. One of the things that King has shared with me shared with us is that because he had been in that place of being honest, transparent, and vulnerable with other people, that the young lady that was the stalker chick, that the people, when she started acting really strange, that the people around him were able to tell him what was happening during those times where, showing him what she was doing when he was not looking. For myself, one of the ways that the transparency, vulnerability, and honesty helped me is that person who wanted to pursue me because I told him no, he fell away because he fell away because he was not able to deal with the fully expanded Arlene experience. It also provides you with the opportunity, the universe has this way of sending you those people who will help you to heal those parts or those aspects of yourself that you still need help in. And when you are, for the most part, you're asking for assistance, for help. The universe, when you are looking to create that experience, God sends his people to help you to overcome whatever it is. So there is a value and a strength to being transparent and authentic and vulnerable and letting people in. So because one of the things that I've observed not only in my life but in the life of others who are willing to share their stories is that the way Source has created this universe is for us to work interdependently with one another. Not one of us on this planet has all the strengths. Not all of us have all the weaknesses. And so when we are working together and being honest and being transparent and ensuring what our strengths are, ensuring what our weaknesses are, we're able to help one another and we move along as a human family.
Yeah, the excitement I see is living an authentic life makes life more fulfilling, as you had brought one of our feature authors to the table regarding that. And what was her name again?
Brene Brown.
Right. Living an authentic life makes life more fulfilling. And for my experience, it was a fulfilling experience because the people who I was associating with before that relationship started, they were able to know me and know the type of person I am. So they could approach me and talk to me about the behavior that she was exhibiting and feel confident enough to approach me to let me know that, there was an interrogation going on, cornering them about, which kind of threw a different light on the subject in and of itself. But then again, it's also recognizing that living an authentic life, it is required to stay spiritually connected, because when it's time for you to fall apart, if you will, or take apart the things that had built you to a particular level in your life's existence, and it's time for change to occur, you can at that point, because of, let's say, feeling uncomfortable, if you will, or feeling uncertain about certain things in your life's experience, you can take them apart and rebuild yourself to be a greater experience and expression of what God has brought you onto the earth to become. Because some things will block us from being that, because we get locked into the wrong mind consciousness because of, let's say, traditional beliefs that may lock us in, or doctrines that others have kind of imposed upon us, or influences that have come from others that is not authentic to who we truly are in this life's living. So it's important indeed to recognize, to live an authentic life, necessary for growth and development.
Okay. So there. Sorry about the delay, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I having issues with the phone here. Well, we do have one caller on the line, so hold on. Area code 773-994. Welcome to One Love, One Connection, One Us.
Hi. One line, one connection. Yeah. Great. You guys are real funny. I just wanted to ask King, what were you covered in? I'm trying to figure out what was your mindset when you had this woman, I look at fatal attraction, some stalking you, and that you were not aware of her vibrations or those energies. I mean, you said, oh, she was just following you everywhere, and it was okay with you. Were you being entertained, or you felt? What were your feelings about this? Because I wonder, you couldn't feel the clinging. You weren't aware of now I wouldn't say the danger, but the sinister, the clinging, the possessiveness. Were there other things that you should have been able to recognize that you didn't? Because it seemed like you weren't aware of all of this until someone came and spoke to you about it, and I guess then that's when you started observing a little closer,
That's
right?
true. Yes, because one of the things I'll share is that I'm a much more spiritual person now than what I used to be. Because honestly speaking, there was two things I was interested in at that particular time. And I'll put it out there like that because I'm transparent like that. I wanted to find a woman that had a car and had a house, because all them other women I was running into, they ain't had no car. They want me to take them everywhere they want to go. They ain't had no house. I couldn't find no privacy anywhere. And I wanted to get some juices going on. And I was like, let me be selective at best in what I want to be selective in. And so she had a car, she had a house, and she wanted to get it on. So I was like, okay, we cool with this. And so the rest was entertainment. It was. And so I'm enjoying what I'm seeing, and enjoying the response and the relationship we was having, but observing what type of person she really was, because I love people. But when I see that that person is a person who is actually has motives that could be detrimental, well then I know that God's covering is on me, no matter how my mind may be at a particular time in my growth experience, because I've always been in love with God. I've always been in love with Spirit. And so I was cool because I knew I was protected. But like I said, when we first encountered one another, and I kind of asked the spirit realm, I said, okay, should I get involved with this? And the spirit realm said, you know, you got free will, but there will be consequences. And I understand that those were my consequences. And when consequences come in, the funny thing about consequences is you never know how long they're going to last. They have to run themselves out, and you have to stay connected to Spirit. So you got to be connected with God so that when the time comes for it to be complete, it's done.
So I guess in a way he did get his heads up. He just decided not to listen. Out of the gate.
Hey, he learned that was a lesson that was learned. It was a lesson learned. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So, we're, you know, no, of you? No, I don't have any question of you. I mean,
because you know I'm always open to you, baby. Anything you want to know, I got it for you.
Oh, okay. So after, you know, I've already talked about the experience of the person that I had talked to before I had met you. And one of the things that I found that when you're connected with Spirit and you are walking in your walking in your authenticity and your vulnerability, when I met you, the experience that I had been that I did not have that block that I had experienced with the person previously with sharing information, and found myself with, my spiritual counsel saying, you need to talk about this, you need to talk about that. You can go ahead and just lay it all out there about your experiences up until the present time. And when, what I had found was let's just say, when I started walking that path of vulnerability, that those things just sort of naturally came up, where I felt like I can be completely honest with you about everything that was going on. So the good, the bad, the ugly, and all of that stuff, I was constantly being sort of led to push a little bit further, even down to making the first phone call, which, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that was just a challenge in and of itself. So, but I will say that when you are in that space of doing that, of being transparent, and if you are not a person who does this on a regular basis, what I would recommend doing is just taking it in small increments. I would say that before you start walking completely in that experience, you start with a crawl, and it could be in a small way, with just asking for assistance with something that you need help in. But just do it in a small way, and and just take the time to gradually walk into that, especially after you've done that work of loving yourself and being honest and transparent with yourself about what your frailties are, what your strengths are, all of that, and being completely loving and accepting of yourself. Take small steps in order to do that in our outward world. And, the dividends are life-changing.
Yeah, and I want to add that that's also and especially important in being connected to your spirit self, because it's important to have that conversation with your spirit self about what's going on in your realm and in your world, and you will get response. And that response is going to help you in an intuitive way of understanding exactly how you're supposed to carry the rest of this walk. So it's about faith, no doubt about it, as far as relationships are concerned. But the first relationship is with you. And as you develop that relationship with yourself, simultaneously as relationships are manifesting around you, and you get to know what's going on. Spirit is helping you through it all. Because that's what brought us here. They ain't going to leave us deserted. Got to be crazy. So you cannot believe contrary to that. You have to trust Spirit and know that Spirit is guiding you through. And if you have issues with that, there's people that's having spiritual walks that are more than willing to share, help, and assist you in your walk.
So we're going to put it out there one more time. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please press 1. If you have a short story that you would like to share with us, please go ahead and press 1. But otherwise, we are going to go ahead and have a love party. So be right back. And we're back. And so if there's anybody who is listening online, please go ahead and call in. Our number here is area code 646-929-0630. That's area code 646-929-0630, because at the 9 o'clock mark, even if we last over a few minutes, you will be cut off if you're listening online. So I do encourage you to call in. Again, that number is area code 646-929-0630. And we have another caller, area code 904-994. Welcome to One Love, One Connection, One Us.
Wow.
Hey.
Hey. This is a great experience to hear the incubation and the growth of such a beautiful relationship that base itself on the clarity of truth and being transparent with one another. The one thing that most relationships don't do on purpose. They don't want you to know who they really are and what they really are. And you guys have seen that the more you knew who you were dealing with, the better and the stronger your relationship became. And that's definitely different from what we're being taught over the times past and times gone. So I'm pleased to be a witness again of such a great expression of tantric love for one another. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
And also, I appreciate your collective prayers and light and love for my expedient healing, because it was a very unusual touch and go there for a moment. It's very rare that people spend 8 days in ICU and able to come out with a greater experience of what life really offers. I've learned the more gracious and simplicity of gratitude has been still growing in my life, and that has caused me to love more, love more, and in return, love more. So I appreciate you guys for the kingdom relationship that you're presenting to us.
We love you, brother. You know that.
Oh yeah, I have no questions about that, none whatsoever. I'm just enjoying the just in your gaze at one another, it transmutes love, and that's definitely endearing and amazing. I appreciate who you are, King, and being king enough to know that being a wizard and a lover and a magician at the right time, you're awesome. You're awesome. You're a great example, brother. Great example.
Namaste, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Amir.
Oh, thank you, Arlene. Love you.
Love you too. Nope. Well, we only have a few more minutes. If you would like to speak with us, just press the number 1, and we will bring you on the air. But again, what we'll do in the meantime is just sort of recap that, when you begin to live a vulnerable life, or live a transparent life, live an authentic life, that life begins to support you. And the person whose works that we were coming from today was Brene Brown, who has written several books on interpersonal relationships and about being vulnerable, about being authentic, and also sharing your stories of shame, and being clear about who you are. The books that she's written, and there are more. I'm just recapping the ones that have to do about the subject. The Gift of Imperfection, which is really about being you and being your authentic self, and regardless of whatever judgment that you feel that you may experience, to just go ahead and be who you are, and be who it is that the Creator has made you to be. And then another book that she wrote is called Daring Greatly, which is about being all in, being completely who you are, walking in that, talking in that, just being completely in that space of authenticity and transparency, and then rising strong, because a rising strong really deals with how, when you are walking this path, you are going to trip, you're going to fall. However, what's important is that to know is that when you start living in this space of being authentic and transparent and vulnerable, that you're going to be stronger as who you are, as opposed to hiding who it is that you are. So, anything that you would like to add, honey, before we get off the air?
Just that. We love everybody who participated in calling, and those who have called and have to listen to the program. We love each and every one of you, and we are so blessed to have your presence.
Okay, and with that, we're going to go ahead and sign out, and we are going to go ahead and give some praise as we're signing out. So we will see you in a few more weeks. Honey, do you know what your next show is going to be about?
I think my show on the 23rd is going to be about passion. We're going to be more interactive on that particular program. We're going to talk about passion. We're going to bring some of the mentality as to what brings me to the story that I have of creation, where, I talk about us being the fallen angels that have been given that chance to come back through, right? what being is really all about. The expression of what the human body is a manifestation of the universe in and of itself. And finding out what you like, the callers, because that builds up the program that gives us the fuel that we need to keep things interesting. So, yeah, we want you to share your passions. We want to talk to you. We want to hear what you got. And we want to give you what we got. And when we put that stuff together, we got something.
Okay. We love you. We appreciate you. We thank God for you. And we know that wherever you are, God is.